What does this mean? Is she...
Hello everyone, this is Caspar, or Courlander Music, just loading up the project for the YouTube Lofi Too Much Cake Cafe. You're about to see the extensity of this project, and here we go. All that has taken place to get it where it is, that you can hear on the YouTube channel, and mix, which is live now, banana bread mix. You can see all the MIDI data that I've used throughout the whole project, all in one view. I've just highlighted everything, as you can see here. I'm also going to go to see the mix window, so the extensity of the plugins and really getting that low fidelity sound, and also the vintage emulation of samplers and a lot of tweaks and EQs to get the traditional lo-fi fidelity to the audio. A lot of sound shifting, sound shifting or pitching down of original audio. I'm just going to play the intro or the first track.
What does this mean?
You can already hear that the audio is in pristine condition before I manipulated it.
Is she...
It's a shame this isn't going out live.
What? This isn't being broadcast?
One of my favourites for this project was the Isotope vinyl, which you can see when I open it just now. You can get the warp effect, and you can also choose years that vinyl was created in. It emulates the decade of that time. So for this, it was 1980s vinyl emulation with around 20% warp depth to it. Just changing my preferences to get the buffer size up. Computer's struggling as it's a old style MacBook Pro, 15-inch, before they started to revert to USB-C, where everything is all in one port. Just give that a sec to load. Let's get back to it. So, a common thing for production, for anything that isn't the bass, you want to give or create room for instrumentation, and especially melodic parts, and whether it's a piano or guitar, or in this case this kind of LFO synth going up and down. So I've taken out all the bass frequencies of it, just to let the kick really in this one come through, as you can hear now. And done quite a bit to reduce the intensity of the kick by the CLA 2A, as you can see here. Another emulation plugin. SSL channel also adds more compression and the SSL fidelity to it, just like you would if you put it through a real SSL desk. I believe that one is the 4000 series by the Aesthetic. I just really like the way these can transcend the sound and transform it into something it feels more balanced than just attack on the audio file. Because in terms of mixing, you don't want to have such loud extremities within the kick and the snare and the melodic parts, because then it's going to be more difficult to master if everything is too far apart in terms of dynamics and dB. A lot more boosters coming here with the sends and my very many buses. So I've got the CLA 2A again, and I'm also slightly compressing it to reduce if the sound reaches over a certain threshold, or a really intense threshold that is. So the compressor isn't doing too much, it's just if the audio was to get too intense, it would bring it down. Again, it's an emulation of the Fairchild, the Puig Child. It really brings out a special character of mids and highs. It just transforms the sound just from really like a dull nature to very vibrant. You'll see the hi-hats here. Just dampening them a bit to give you and your ears an idea of space and width, not just having it all compressed into very monophonic sounding. Our compressor is used a lot, and also the C1. It just, for my ears, doesn't really change a lot in terms of the sonic fidelity of a sound. So when you are happy with the sound, usually use the R compressor or the C1 if you don't want to kind of add some sort of harmonic distortion as you would with another one of the Waves emulation plugins. I also created this guitar samba track. This is me playing the guitar. Also, another kind of interesting thing I did, I added a de-esser, to the track to take away the harsh frequencies of the guitar. Basically what a de-esser does is find the frequency that you place it to and compresses it, just like a compressor, but more precise in terms of where you're specifying it to go, not just the whole audio signal.
Divine Consultantsien maailmaan on täynnä
This is Juha sending me a voice note, the creative Divine Consultants. I'm just modifying it. He spoke some Finnish, as you can hear.
on täynnä surua
Whatever he's saying.
maailmaan. Divine
Consultantsien
More pitching down,
maailmaan
EQs,
täynnä surua.
our compressors and width.
Tervetuloa toiseen
It's a very good plugin, this wider plugin.
Divine Consultantsien
Oh, open up.
maailmaan, se joka on täynnä surua.
I'll throw out the sends.
Tervetuloa toiseen maailmaan.
DS plugin, width, polyverse plugin.
Se joka on täynnä surua.
Very, very interesting. And also never seems to have any phase issues as well, which you would get from a lot of the stereo width plugins, especially Logic's one. From when I've used it, it doesn't really get the job done as well. Another good way of using these width plugins is you can add it to the reverb. So on the send, you can add the reverb first, and you can have the width plugin. So it gets a more dramatic reverb and space, usually to vocals or guitars or anything that you want to add to the send. Dum. It's going to be Waves piano for that one there. As Logic has the EXS24 for their sampling and to create drum samples and drum kits, I will always refer to Battery 4 before anything else on Logic, because it's just a very well-made plugin, much cleaner to use and more simplified, and more advanced tools also in a kind of easier to see space than the EXS24. So that's why it's my go-to. J37, also a desk emulation plugin. You can add the saturation and the tape hiss. You can also do kind of tape slowdowns as well.
Wait, I need to...
Hear more samples. It's really important to get the EQ and compression done. I would say first, before you finish the general idea of a song. Because you won't hear the frequencies as you should hear them. A lot of processing going on with the CPU. It's barely handling it. Surprised this project was even able to finish without. I prefer working without bouncing to stems. It just takes quite a while, and when you want to get an idea done, you just want to throw in an instrument panel, get the idea jotted down, and create it. There we go, another one. The Abbey Road vinyl. This one does the tape stops very nicely. If you don't have the ability to do it in your DAW. You can also use the fades, the ins and outs, if you change the tool type for the right or left mouse. So yeah, I'm going to go on to a bit of the mastering now and go in between the mix and the master. Let this load. There you go. So it's really the mastering, well, what it came down to in the mastering, where I added the majority of excess plugins to control the real amount of space and change the dynamic changes throughout the kind of transition periods and the periods between all the different tracks, because you have to mix into one to the other. Here we go. This is a Vitamin. It's kind of a glorified version of the Sound Gooderizer or Sound Goodizer that you will see in FL Studio or Fruity Loops. Also glorified multi-band compressor, this one. It gets the job done as well. This compressor might not seem like it's doing much, but it's really doing the same job as I do for other compressors. Yeah, only if the sound was to get extremely loud over the threshold, I would want it to slightly compress down, but nothing to feel like it's getting compressed when you're listening to it. I've changed the ratio just so you can see the other side of it. And for YouTube, limiting is targeted for -14 LUFS, the loudness metering system they use and other streaming services use. Broadcast television is -23, YouTube is much, much louder. As you know, 9 LUFS is louder. And it's okay with some clipping. It gives that very sampler-esque quality to it. Nothing is perfect in analog, that's why it makes it so special to listen to, and why there's such a huge community still in it. So as you can see, the equalizer that I've used, I boosted low mids and also some mids and some high, and it also rolls off at around 18,000 hertz. Camera Crusher is a great plugin as well, just to boost and get that bit more distortion to bring the dynamics all together. Just checking the EQ, as you can see. Nothing's really standing out. Balanced. Even with the very forefront of the mix kick, it's still balanced. L3 and also the Logic data limiter. Only slightly peaking. It's also a loudness metering plugin. There you go. That is all that there is to the mastering chain. I believe this master file levels at an average LUFS of minus 14.4, I believe. As you can imagine, for dance music that is very repetitive, with similar dynamics in between each song and not many transitions, it's much easier to level out than having a multitude of tracks, as you see here and as you can hear in this mix and master.
Then you let yourself in and turned on the Almis sprinklers, making her as brain dead as Katie.
Also snippets from the show, mixed in with the musical elements. I'm going to go back to the mix now, just after you've seen a glimpse of the master file and the master chain. Of course, you don't need to use such an excess of third-party plugins, but it does make the process simplified, and less headspace needs to be taken up for trying to emulate sounds using plugins that are default on Logic. Though they have a good variety, there's just plugins that do the job faster. It's another thing to discuss, whether it is worth spending the extra amount of money on a third-party plugin than staying within the tools and the realm of Logic Pro and the tools that Apple provide for you. However, if you are someone that wants to just get ideas out thoroughly and quickly with the results, and you don't want to be scouting and scouring around for something that can change the sound, you usually might have to use 3 plugins in your Logic to get the sound of just one. For example, Vitamin. So yeah, this is an interesting or important thing to think about if you want to spend the extra money or not. Decimal is an incredible plugin. They've got many emulations of vintage samplers. You can change intensity with these tools, so you're not just limited to what the company gives you in one emulation. Also reducing the bitrate to a maximum of 16 for this sound in particular. And accompanied with the isotope vinyl, it really creates that atmosphere of an old style record, which was very important for the aesthetic of the cafe, Lofi Cafe. More bus sends, the CLA2A and the R compressor. Another thing, if you notice around the fader section, or the metering section that is, I've aimed for a maximum of around -60 dB for headroom in the mastering. Let's go through this listening. Just showing you the drop between the intro to the chorus section, or to the main section of the track. One has been compressed more thoroughly, and the drop per se has been uncompressed, or the compression has been taken away to give it more of an impact when it begins. This track was actually made in Ableton, which made the creation of the track much more fluid, because I can drag and drop and place different samples throughout the live session as I recorded it, which would be much more difficult with Logic. Even if you were to have, say, an Ableton Launchpad or any MIDI controller. I definitely say for creating drum samples and lo-fi, Ableton would probably be the way to go. Let's just listen back to some. And I'm also going to compare the master file with the mix, so you can see that there's been some audible changes other than volume increase in the master, but not so much that it changes the original mix file, because I didn't want to change too much. I still wanted to keep the same groove. I didn't want to take away the really hard hitting kick so much. I just wanted to increase the volume and also give it some boost in some areas, but not so much that it sounds like a completely other track file, which is a lot of the time a producer or mastering engineer can make the mistake, if they're not experienced that is, or if they just get too involved in the track, they want to really alter what an artist or a producer sent them. But as you can see,
What does this mean? Is she...
just going to solo in and out between the mix and the master.
This isn't being broadcast.
And as you can see, both waveforms are similar, with even more reduced dynamics in the master. From afar, it might look like a brick wall master, but it's actually full of dynamics, which helps bring the groove and also the vinyl feel to it. The old style methods of recording don't involve over-compression and over-limiting. It's all about the dynamic and relation between one instrument, which can be very, very severe. As if you were to listen back to an old record from the 50s or 60s, a guitar solo could be even 5, 6 dB, even louder, from the guitars that are played throughout the song. Moreover, I do understand that in modern day music production, mastering that is, the goal and objective for most artists is to sound, or to have a louder master than the reference track, or to be on par with it so it stands out. However, if someone likes your art, they like your art regardless of how loud it is. And it really feels like the master is breathing more than the mix as well. It's more down to the multi-band compression. It still feels very, very open. bass is very well moderated, as you can hear. It's just balanced, not overpowering whatsoever, but it's still very present. Thank you very much.